Good afternoon, everybody. It's Caleb here with Indiana Storm Chasing Network here. Going to talk about our severe weather risk here this afternoon into early this evening. Again, we have a level 2 out of 5 in place for the majority of Indiana in yellow, and then we have a 3 out of 5 enhanced risk in place by the Storm Prediction Center for western Indiana, area south of Gary, all the way down to just north of Vincennes. Again, all risks, all hazards are possible here this afternoon into tonight. By the SPC, we do have a large blanketed 5% risk across the majority of Indiana. There in brown, but we also have a 10 to 14 risk in hatched across western Indiana. Again, for those of you that forget, the hatched area is representative of a possibility of a stronger tornado or two possible here this afternoon. Again, stronger meaning EF2 plus tornado is possible there in the hatched area, primarily across western Indiana from Vincennes all the way up to just south of Gary. Again, those are where the ingredients are a little bit more favorable for stronger tornadoes or where tornadoes may occur in greater frequency. And again, we have a general blanket for a wind risk across the majority of the state of Indiana. Without further ado, let's go take a look at the models here, and we'll time this out for you. Again, here we are at 5 o'clock here tonight. Again, we expect rapid development across central Illinois. Again, a lot of these will be individual cells or supercells across northern Illinois, even central Illinois. So a lot of these will have the capability of producing hail, damaging winds, and or tornadoes across Illinois. As we go into around dinner time tonight, here's 6 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Some of these storms may be getting pretty close to the Indiana-Illinois border, but again, they're localized, they're isolated in nature as depicted here by our latest guidance models here. Again, this is the 15Z run here. This is our afternoon model run here, the HRRR. Again, really been keen on keeping this an individual supercell threat at first. Again, as we go through here, you'll see how these will likely grow upscale into a line or QLCS as they move across the state, similar to what we had Friday night into Saturday morning. Again, having a line move across the state, a very similar setup, but again, we're closer to where the storms first initiate, so that's key in tornado genesis and having what hazards we will have here again. So storms look to fire across central Illinois around 3 to 5 p.m. Again, as individual cells. As we move into Indiana, here we are at 7 o'clock here tonight. Again, still could have some isolated supercells here, some individual supercells capable of large hail, damaging winds, and a tornado or two cannot be ruled out here across western Indiana. Here we are at 8 o'clock here tonight. Again, some of these cells might be starting to grow upscale a little bit by this point in time later tonight. After that 7 p.m. time frame here across central Indiana, models have really wanted to hone in on kind of a line kind of developing here. Some of these individual cells merging together into a squall line or a QLCS as it moves into central and eastern Indiana. Here we are at 8 p.m. here tonight, 9 p.m., 10 p.m. Around after 10 p.m. is when some uncertainty begins to play. We start running out of some ingredients here across eastern Indiana into western Ohio. Some of those ingredients being instability and moisture. So those two components are going to be needed to be watched here very closely. That'll really play an important role on the evolution of these storms, on how strong they are when they progress into eastern Indiana, into northwest Ohio, and what hazards will be associated with those. A lot of that will depend on how much instability we have left. Again, this is 10 o'clock at night. We've lost our sun. We don't have any daytime heating anymore. But we do have a lot of kinetics. We have a lot of wind shear and a lot of lift with a cold pool off that can help kind of replace some of that instability with some thermodynamic driven risk. But again, a lot of that will depend on how much moisture and instability is left. So some uncertainty as we go into eastern Indiana. But here we are at midnight tonight. Again, most of the storms will be out of the state by midnight tonight. This is a late afternoon through early tonight risk, 5 p.m. through midnight tonight. But once this line moves through, those of you on the west side should be in the clear. And then we'll have to talk about going into tomorrow. Yes, your eyes aren't playing tricks on you. That is snow. We could see a quick change over to snow Thursday morning before turning partly cloudy during the day and the afternoon. So again, thunderstorms today, wintry mix, and snow tomorrow for the first day of spring. Yeah, I'm not excited about it either. But the good news is no accumulations are expected. Could have perhaps maybe some brief accumulations on grassy surfaces and some heavier bands, especially northwest Indiana. But again, long-lived accumulations on roadways or anything like that not expected tomorrow. But again, we'll time this out for you one more time here. For those of you just joining in, I see we have a lot of new people in here as of right now. So this is 5 o'clock here tonight, Eastern Daylight Time. Isolated thunderstorms and supercells developing across central Illinois here around this time. This is 5 o'clock. As we move into dinner time, most of us are home cooking dinner here at 6 p.m. Some of these supercells and thunderstorms start moving into western Indiana. Again, notice the individual risk here. A lot of these storms are by themselves. This is representative of isolated thunderstorms. Some of those could be supercells, meaning they could have a rotating updraft, could be capable of producing tornadoes, hail, and damaging winds associated with them as well. But these storms start to grow upscale a little bit by 8 o'clock quickly as they move into central Indiana. A lot of these supercells will merge into a QLCS or a line of convection of showers and thunderstorms as they quickly move across the state of Indiana. The tornado risk is greatest across western Indiana, where we have these individual cells. These will have the greatest risk for tornadoes. Again, take this forecast model with a grain of salt. Doesn't mean we're going to have a supercell just northwest of Lafayette. But again, it gives you a good idea of what the radar may look like come this evening. Again, just kind of honing in on that isolated storm threat as we move into later this evening between that 6 and 8 p.m. time frame is probably the greatest window for tornadoes in western Indiana before these storms start to merge and grow upscale into a line. Then it kind of transitions into more of a wind threat with an isolated spin-up tornado risk thereafter. Again, we have a lot of vorticity, a lot of wind shear in the atmosphere here tonight. And then here we are at 9 o'clock here tonight. Again, could have a line of thunderstorms still going strong here across central Indiana. It's getting ready to move into eastern Indiana. But again, this time after is where our uncertainty becomes a little less unclear. We really don't know how much instability or moisture is going to be left here for these storms to tap into. We do expect a gradual weakening trend as these storms move into Ohio. But again, how weak these storms are will really dependent on how strong and mature these storms are as they enter Indiana and how they evolve from there. So a lot of things to look at here as to the evolution of these storms as we go into this afternoon and this evening. And then here we are at 10 o'clock here tonight, Fort Wayne, all the way down to just outside Bloomington towards Seymour. Could be getting some thunderstorms here tonight. And then here we are at 11 o'clock. Some of these storms may be starting to move out. We could still have some lingering showers and perhaps a thunderstorm behind this line. Really kind of along the warm front here. Here's our low pressure sitting back across Illinois at this time. We have a dry slot moving in behind. That'll shut off the rain for most, but we could have some isolated storms along the Indiana-Michigan border. And then by midnight tonight, all the thunderstorms and severe weather should be out of the state. And then some rain showers and even some snow move back into the picture by tomorrow morning. This is 5 a.m. Thursday morning. Could have some wintry mix across northern central Indiana. In fact, let me go to the 12Z here. In fact, a lot of Indiana could see a good chance of seeing some snowflakes here tomorrow. But again, snow accumulations, not expected. We could have some rain-snow mix, perhaps maybe some slushy accumulations across northwest Indiana here. But again, we're really limited in moisture, and we don't have a lot of cold air, and our ground temperatures are quite warm. Some places over 45 degrees. So again, that'll help limit any impacts we have from that. We'll go back here to our risk hazard here tonight. Again, these are our risks that we have here in place in Indiana here tonight. We have a medium risk for tornadoes as well as wind with a just below medium for hail. Again, our highest hail threat will be across western Indiana where we have those individual thunderstorms, those isolated updrafts. That's where we expect the strongest convection to be. That's where also the highest tornado risk will be across western Indiana. Again, where we have those individual supercells are the storms that we'll have to watch here tonight. If they do indeed materialize, all hazards are in place across western Indiana. We have a limited risk across, this is our tornado outlook here for tonight. We have a limited risk in green across eastern Indiana. We have a low risk in brown, but we also have a medium risk that is also hatched across western Indiana. And that is because we expect some isolated supercells along the Indiana-Illinois border, west central Indiana from Evansville all the way to Gary, Indiana, where we could have the potential for perhaps even a stronger tornado. EF2 plus cannot be ruled out with the wind shear parameters that we have here in place across the Indiana-Illinois border later this afternoon. Greatest timing for that, probably between the 5 p.m. and 8 p.m. time frame for the best tornado potential. Thereafter, these storms will merge into a line, and then the wind threat takes over with perhaps an isolated spin-up tornado. Again, here's a look at our wind threat. We have a blanketed medium risk all across the entire state of Indiana here tonight. As these storms evolve into a line of storms as they move across the state. Again, storm motions could be pretty fast. We could be talking about some fast movers like we had Friday night and early Saturday morning. A lot of strong winds involved steering these storms and moving them rather quickly. So something to keep an eye on. Again, hail risk, greatest risk across western Indiana, Gary, Rensselaer, Lafayette, Terre Haute, Vincennes, Evansville, where we have those isolated updrafts. Again, supercells usually promote the highest risks in terms of hail, tornadoes, and winds, just because of those isolated updrafts. That's really what you need to get large hailstones to develop. And we have a lot of cold air aloft. You don't have to go up very high to run into that cold air. And anytime you get a stronger updraft in that environment, hail becomes a dominant factor there. And just in case a tornado warning is issued tonight, you guys need to know where to go. I know we had some practice here the other night. We had some severe weather move through. But again, just in case we need a refresher course, if you're in a well-built structure, again, interior room, first floor, lowest level, away from windows, anywhere in a basement, anywhere underground is safe from a tornado. Put as many walls between you and the outside as possible. Again, nowhere upstairs or near a window is safe from a tornado. Tornadoes do their damage from the outside in. So putting as many walls between you and the outside will increase the chances for safety and survival in the event of a tornado. And again, nowhere is safe outside from a tornado. If you happen to be driving on the roadways tonight, I know some of these storms may start during kind of the later portion of rush hour, especially across western Indiana, where we're on central time over there. I mean, some of these storms may start during rush hour. So again, knowing where to go if you're on the road in the event of a tornado warning is key for safety. Again, pull over, find a well-built structure such as a hospital, a local house, somewhere where you can knock on the door and be welcomed in, and then seek shelter from there. If you are in a mobile home or trailer park, again, having a predetermined destination is key. Again, being prepared, knowing what to do, so you can take action and in the event a tornado warning is issued. So have that predetermined safe structure in mind that you can evacuate your trailer or mobile home to in the event a tornado warning is issued. Again, hopefully we don't see any tonight, but the risk is there. With that being said, let's go to the comments here. I know we have quite a few people in here tonight. Welcome, everybody. Go ahead and go to the comments here. All right, we got Briley in here. We got Carolyn in here. Caden's in here. Sarah's in here. What is going on, everybody? We got Rhonda in here. Yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat here. I see one in here. Rhonda's asking about Fort Wayne, Indiana. They're in Northwest Indiana.
Hey, Caleb. I just want to briefly touch. We have a tornado watch now in effect for portions of Indiana. Getting information on it now.
Yep, my phone just got the email on it.
Tornado watch: Benton, Clay, Davies, Fountain, Greene, Knox, Martin, Montgomery, Newton, Owen, Park, Putnam, Sullivan, Tippecanoe, Vermilion, Vigo, and Warren counties until 10 p.m. tonight.
Try to get that pulled up here for you guys so I can show you exactly where that is at. But again, you just heard Ryan, so we do have a tornado watch now in effect for western Indiana. And we could see some expansions of the watches as we go in tonight. A lot of that will be determined by how strong these storms are and how they evolve as they move across the state. Just issued, so the graphic is not loaded in here yet. All right. Anyway, yeah, back to your question there, Rhonda, on Northeast Indiana. Again, our highest risk is across Western Indiana. That's where your greatest risk for tornadoes will be. But we'll go ahead and time it out here one more time for you guys that are just joining in. Again, storms are expected to fire pretty rapidly across central Illinois here tonight. As we move into that 5-6 o'clock time frame, watch for isolated supercells to develop along the Indiana-Illinois border. Again, all hazards possible with these storms as they first develop near state line. These storms will quickly move east. Here we are at 8 p.m. here tonight. Again, these storms are expected to merge into what's called a QLCS, or a quasi-linear convective system. That's a fancy weather term for a line of showers and thunderstorms associated with actually a dry line here as it moves here across the state. Here we are at 8 p.m. here tonight. And then here we are, Rhonda, Fort Wayne, probably somewhere between that 9-10 p.m. time frame is when we can start to expect these storms moving in, mainly getting into Whitley County, maybe between 8:30 and 9, and then Fort Wayne, 9 to 10 p.m. Mainly a damaging wind threat as we go into eastern Indiana, and a lot of that will be determined on how strong these storms are when they first initiate and how they progress. Again, there is a little bit of uncertainty here across northeast and eastern Indiana as a whole, as in how much instability we'll have left, how much moisture we'll have left, and how these storms adapt and evolve as they move across the state. But nonetheless, a severe risk is on the table for eastern Indiana. Again, damaging winds, primary threat by eastern Indiana, but a spin-up tornado cannot be ruled out anywhere along this line here from Angola, Indiana, all the way down to Seymour, Indiana, southern Indiana, Ohio River. Again, damaging winds, primary threat once we get this line stage, but spin-up tornadoes can happen anywhere along this line as we have a lot of wind shear here tonight. And that includes, your comment, Wells County, Indiana. Yeah, same thing for there. Damaging winds, possibility of a spin-up tornado. Again, Fort Wayne, Wells County, they're in eastern Indiana. Anywhere between that 9 to 11 o'clock time frame for you guys. And then storms should be out of here by that midnight time frame here. Here's 11 o'clock. Here's midnight. A lot of these storms are into Ohio by this time frame. But notice how much weaker the guidance really tries to place this line here as it moves into Ohio. So again, where that weakening trend exactly starts is our uncertainty here. Here we have a really mature QLCS here depicted on this model here. Again, this is the HRRR. This is 8 o'clock. And then here we are by 11 o'clock midnight tonight, a lot weaker of a line represented there. So again, where that transition happens, where that weakening trend starts is where uncertainty is. So right now, all hazards on the table anywhere in Indiana here tonight. Damaging winds is the primary threat across the eastern half of Indiana with a spin-up tornado, and then shift gears to western Indiana. All hazards are on the table, including the possibility of a stronger tornado. And then we do have a hatched area in place. Here we go. For western Indiana, between Gary, Indiana, Rensselaer, Lafayette, Terre Haute, Vincennes, Evansville. You guys are on deck for a potential for a strong tornado. We're going to have to watch you guys very, very closely, again, how these storms develop, where they first develop, and how strong they're able to obtain their updrafts. Again, we have a lot of wind shear in place, a lot of ingredients in place that could support tornadoes, especially in isolated supercells. Again, these storms right in here, as long as they remain isolated, they do have a threat for large hail, damaging winds, heavy rain, and tornadoes, with the possibility of a stronger tornado as well. Cannot be ruled out. So we'll go back to the comments here.
Okay, I just want to point out the watch issuance.
Yeah.
We have some probabilities here. It is a 50% chance of one or more or two or more tornadoes across the watch area. There is a 30% chance that there's going to be one of EF2 or higher intensity. And also within that,
Can we upload that in the media assets here? I can, if you're able to.
Go ahead and take some comments. I'll get you set up here.
Yeah. Ryan's going to go ahead and put that graphic in here so we can show you what counties are actually in the tornado watch that has been issued now for western Indiana. And we'll get that loaded in here to show you. Again, it was just issued here in the last 5 minutes, so a very new tornado watch here. And that really goes for these threat of isolated supercells here across the Indiana-Illinois border, where they have the greatest potential for severe weather, including tornadoes, some of which could be strong if we do get that one or two supercells that are able to maintain themselves. Again, I see a lot of questions in here for individual cities. Again, the risk is the same no matter where you're at. Again, greatest risk being in western Indiana, with a slightly lesser risk the further east you go. Again, wind is the primary threat, tornadoes secondary threat, with large hail being right up there with tornadoes. Again, western Indiana has the greatest risk for seeing tornadoes here tonight, including the possibility of perhaps a stronger tornado or two being in that hatched area. Again, a hatched area means best chances for an EF2 plus tornado. That's when the NWS describes a strong tornado. Again, weaker tornadoes, EF0, EF1, strong tornadoes, EF2 plus. we do have some variables in place that would suggest the atmosphere is capable of producing one. Doesn't mean we're going to get one. It just means we have ingredients in place that increase that probability today. Again, wind outlook is the same across the board here today, especially going to central and eastern Indiana, where the supercells evolve into a line or QLCS. That's when your wind threat really takes over versus a tornado threat. And then your hail threat is obviously minimized as well. Once we get in a line again, these line of storms aren't really known to be make hail makers, but what they are known for, damaging winds and spin up tornadoes. Could have a few instances of quarter inch hail within some of these lines. Again, a lot of cold air aloft. But I think once we get out of the individual supercell stage and we morph or evolve into a QLCS, that's when the wind threat really takes over.
I do have those graphics loaded in for you, Caleb. I do have the tornado watch up there in effect there for basically Lafayette, Crawfordsville down to about that Bedford area and then points westward to the Illinois border. So that watch does include a majority of central Illinois and parts of west central Indiana. We could see an extension of that depending on how it trends tonight. So if you are in the Indianapolis area over toward Richmond, we could get additional watches issued later on today. But for right now, they went ahead and put the initial watch out. And the probabilities for that watch are as follows here. And you can see the probability of 2 or more tornadoes is at 50%. So a decent chance we're going to see more than 2 tornadoes across the watch area, one of which could be strong. EF2 or higher, it's a 30% chance. So not a very high risk for that, but there's a chance nonetheless. And the wind there, moderate risk, is 50% probability of 10 or more wind events. And then 1 or more significant wind events is at low 20%. But the combined severe and hail of 6 or more events is a high probability at 80%. So it's a decent watch there. Again, regardless of any probabilities, there is potential for severe weather today. So take it very seriously. And that does extend, the watch does extend over into the western portion of Indiana. More could be issued throughout the afternoon and evening.
Yep. Again, this tornado watch is primarily for those isolated supercells that first pop up here and develop across Illinois and western Indiana. Those storms in particular will have the greatest risk for tornadoes, large hail, and damaging winds. Further downstream, these storms are expected to evolve into a QLCS or a line of showers and thunderstorms that quickly propagate eastward across the state. We'll probably transition from a tornado threat to a damaging wind threat as those lines kind of merge together, as those storms merge together and quickly move. But a spin-up tornado or two can't be ruled out. Generally, your risk of a stronger tornado starts to really go down once we get into a QLCS. But spin-up tornadoes spin up very quickly. Generally, they're short-lived, but they can come without warning. So if you are in a severe thunderstorm warning tonight, again, heed it, take shelter, as anywhere in the state tonight could see the potential for severe weather. All right, any other questions you guys have here? Have you seen the dust on satellite, Emmanuel asked? Yeah, you know what? I was just talking to Ryan about that a little bit ago on how I actually can't keep my eyes off satellite because of how mesmerizing it is to watch. But here's a look at visible satellite here. Here is our low pressure system sitting right here at the Missouri, Kansas, Nebraska line here, sitting right in there. You can see it spinning there. As you look here, look at all this brown that is being pulled up ahead of this low here. This is all dust in the mid-levels and upper levels of the atmosphere. And this all got kicked up from Arizona and Texas and New Mexico yesterday. All of this dust got swept up through the plains and lofted into the mid-levels of the atmosphere as this low intensified over the southwest and occluded northward. It pulled a lot of that dust northward here. So you can actually see that. So if we do have some showers develop here tonight, just like last time, we could have some dirty splotches on our windshields on our cars here tomorrow morning as these raindrops fall through a lot of this dust, and a lot of that dust particles stick to the or act as condensation nuclei actually and kind of stick to those raindrops. And so that rain could bring some, it's called dirty rain, may bring some of that Texas dust on our vehicles here by morning. So wouldn't be surprised to see that. Yeah, we can go ahead and Kayleen asked for timing again. Yeah, we can go ahead and time it out here for you, for those of you just joining in. Let's go back here. Oh, here we go. Here we are at 5 o'clock here tonight is when we really expect things to really ramp up across Illinois. Again, individual supercells are expected to fire across central Illinois, maybe potentially even southeast Illinois as well. Can't be ruled out. Again, all hazards possible with these as we move towards the 6 o'clock hour. This is the time to watch for western Indiana. Some of these supercells or thunderstorms may be moving in near our border and starting to move into western Indiana. Again, all hazards possible here from large hail, tornadoes, and damaging winds, all associated with these. Again, they're expected to become more numerous in number. Here's 7 o'clock here tonight. Here is 8 p.m. here tonight. Once we get to around that 8 p.m., 9 p.m. time frame, again, these storms are expected to merge and evolve into what's known as a QLCS, or quasi-linear convective system. That's a fancy weather term for a line of showers and thunderstorms. Once we see this line develop, your tornado risk goes down just a little bit, but your damaging wind risk goes up. We start seeing bowing segments within this line that could really enhance damaging winds, but you could also get a few spin-up tornadoes. We call those mesovortices that develop here within the line. You can kind of see this little bend here, but you can also see little notches or little kinks in the line. So some of this may be trying to be representative of some embedded rotation here. So again, something we'll have to watch here. Not uncommon within these lines. Here we are at 10 o'clock here tonight, eastern Indiana, Fort Wayne, Seymour, Winchester, all the way down to Seymour, Indiana. Could get a line of showers and thunderstorms moving through. Again, more uncertainty for far eastern Indiana here. It really depends on how much moisture and instability we have left over. Again, this is 10 o'clock at night. We've lost our sun. We lost our daytime heating. So we really have to look at how much ingredients we have left and really how these storms evolve as they propagate eastward across Indiana. So again, our greatest uncertainty is eastern Indiana, especially east of the I-69 corridor, especially north of Indianapolis. We have some more uncertainty up there. But again, damaging winds, primary hazard, spin-up tornado, secondary hazard, once we get into this line in this phase of the storm's propagation. But something to look at here, we are expecting a gradual weakening trend here. Here's 9 o'clock tonight, and here's 11 o'clock and midnight. You can notice how much weaker the line is being depicted here on this guidance model here. Again, I'll show you again. Here's 9 o'clock. Here's 11 o'clock. So we are still trying to see that weakening trend, but we just don't know when that's going to start taking place. Again, these storm motions could be pretty fast. These storms could be moving at 50 to 60 miles an hour again. So depending on how fast they move, could play a role in how fast they start weakening as well as carrying that risk for damaging winds into western Ohio. Places like Dayton, Wapakoneta could get in some gusty winds here tonight. Can't rule out a tornado, but I think the tornado risk is greatly minimized once you get into Ohio here tonight, just because we really run out of a lot of the ingredients that we have here in place across western Indiana that we don't look to have across far eastern Indiana and western Ohio. Again, these are things and trends that we're going to have to watch here throughout the afternoon, early evening, and into tonight. But that's just how it's trending right now. How come Lake County, Indiana isn't under a tornado watch? Right now, the better environment is off to your south and west. Northwest Indiana will still have to be monitored for a watch and development. It really depends on how these storms evolve. Right now, storms are expected to develop across your south and west. That's where the better ingredients are right now. West central Indiana and central Illinois. Where it goes from there is kind of up in the air, whether they stay individual supercells or when that transition is from individual to a line. That's really what's unknown. That transition is expected to happen around that 7, 8 o'clock time frame. It's just really where that transition happens and how strong these storms are. Again, the Storm Prediction Center will be looking at all that data and those trends to then work in cooperation with Northern Indiana and Indianapolis, those two weather offices, and maybe Grand Rapids as well, on when and where a watch may or will be needed. So wouldn't be surprised to see a downstream watch, but whether it's a severe thunderstorm or tornado, or if a watch will be issued at all, really be determined on how these storms evolve and what confidence level the Storm Prediction Center is in congruence with our National Weather Service offices here across the state. With that being said, Ryan, did I miss anything?
No, not really. But we are watching radar currently live radar, not models, but what's actually happening out there currently. And
Yeah.
we do see a couple of storms going up across the Indiana area. Did my screen go dark, or is it being displayed?
Nope, you're up there. I can
Okay,
see your
no,
GR2.
I
Nope,
don't
you're
see
good.
it. Okay, I don't see it on my end, but we have storms developing here across Illinois. They are moving to the northeast here pretty rapidly. Already have a severe warning in effect here for Illinois. Here, it's going to be for the Macomb area, McDonough County, and that's going to be over in the U.S. central part of Illinois. So we already are seeing these develop. We'll start to see these develop further into the afternoon, but right now, no immediate risk for Indiana, but it'll ramp up here after that 4, 5, 6 o'clock time frame.
Yep, those storms there on your radar will likely occlude and pull northward, and then we'll have to watch for additional development behind those storms closer to the Indiana-Illinois border here later this afternoon over the next few hours. Something to watch for sure. But then again, there's enough confidence that the Storm Prediction Center went ahead and already issued a tornado watch ahead of these storms for this evening, as we are starting to see those ingredients coming together for severe weather, including tornadoes, and the possibility of a stronger tornado or two cannot be ruled out. So with that being said here, guys, any questions you may have here, again, I'll do a brief recap here. Again, all hazards possible tonight with the greatest risk across western Indiana, those of you shaded in orange. We do have a tornado risk here with the primary risk, or I guess greatest risk, being across western Indiana, limited risk in green, low risk, and we also have a medium risk that is hatched across western Indiana for the possibility of a stronger tornado or two cannot be ruled out. Damaging winds, blanketed medium risk across the entire state of Indiana. Again, we are expecting these storms to kind of merge into a QLCS or a squall line that'll move through later tonight. Around that 7 to 8 o'clock time frame is when we expect these storms to kind of merge into a line that'll quickly move eastward and then be out of the state by midnight tonight. So again, a medium risk for damaging winds statewide tonight, as everyone could have a fair shot at seeing some gusty winds. Hail, greatest hail outlook or risk is across western Indiana, where we have those isolated thunderstorms. Again, isolated storms with isolated updrafts have the greatest risk for producing larger stones. Wouldn't be surprised to see a couple reports, perhaps up to $50, if not golf ball size, especially in Illinois and western Indiana, where we have the strongest supercells. But again, that hail risk will go down quite a bit once we merge into a squall line. But again, quarter-size hail can't be ruled out anywhere in Indiana here tonight. It's just the widespread nature of it will go down once we get into a line or a more linear storm mode. The risk really transitions into a damaging wind threat, and your updrafts are minimized just a little bit to really not promote those larger stones. But again, dime to nickel and perhaps quarter-size hail possible all the way across eastern Indiana here tonight. Again, here's the last look at the Storm Prediction Center. They do have a slight risk across the majority of Indiana with an enhanced risk, 3 out of 5 for western Indiana. That's largely where your tornado watch is currently right now. Again, we do have a 10% hatched area there in yellow. That is an area favored by the Storm Prediction Center for an EF2 plus tornado, where we have our ingredients coming together too that could support a brief stronger tornado. Can't be ruled out in that hatched area, which does include western Indiana with a blanketed wind risk, as we are expecting these storms to kind of merge into a line or evolve as it propagates eastward across Indiana here tonight. And again, here's a look at our tornado watch that just got affected here. It is until 9 p.m. Central Time, 10 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time here in Indiana. A couple strong tornadoes possible, scattered hail up to ping pong ball size possible. Again, your greatest hail risk will be in those storms that are by themselves, that have everything to themselves, those isolated updrafts. A lot of cold air aloft, so when we get those storms by themselves and they're able to tap into that cold air, could get some large hailstones to develop in there as well. Damaging winds, scattered gusts up to 70 miles an hour possible. Again, we have a lot of wind shear, both in speed and directional. So when you get these stronger storms to develop, they could pull some of that wind down to the ground, giving us our 70 mile per hour gusts possible within this watch area. Again, this goes till 9 o'clock Central Time, 10 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time for Western Indiana. Does include Crawfordsville, Terre Haute, Vincennes, and Lafayette. Go back to the comments here one last time here before we hop out. And again, we will be live here tonight to cover our severe weather coverage in Indiana. We are expecting some severe thunderstorm warnings tonight, and we will be live to cover those just like we were Friday night into Saturday morning. Luckily, the risk does not look to go too much past 1 a.m. So I think Ryan and I are excited for that. That was a late night. the
I
other
can
night.
attest to that. We were up streaming until 7 in the morning for you guys.
Yeah, and then we did it again the next day. So,
Yep.
welcome to Indiana. But yeah, as we time this out, we'll time it out one last time here before we hop off. Again, here we are. I'll switch to our latest run here. Actually, 16Z loaded in. Yeah. So here we are at 6 p.m. here tonight. Again, isolated showers and thunderstorms starting to move in Indiana. Some of these could be supercells, promoting a risk for hail, damaging winds, and tornadoes. Here we are at 7 o'clock here tonight. Again, 7 to 8 p.m. time frame is a time frame to watch for when these storms go from individual supercells into a QLCS or a line of convection. But we'll have to watch for a damaging wind risk and a spin-up tornado risk anywhere within this line across Indiana. Here we are at 8 p.m., 9 p.m., 10 p.m. So this actually sped it up just a little bit. This run here is about 30, 45 minutes ahead of what our last run is. So somewhere between the 9 10 p.m. across eastern Indiana. But again, we are still looking at that weakening trend here as depicted here across eastern Indiana, especially northeast Indiana, northwest Ohio, where that weakening trend starts at. Again, we have a pretty strong line here, okay, starting the weekend, and then we have a really weak, unorganized line here by midnight tonight, especially by 1 a.m. So where that weakening trend starts is still a little bit more uncertain, but it's why we have our risk tapering off as we get towards the Ohio-Indiana border. We just kind of run out of ingredients. And yes, your eyes aren't playing tricks on you. That is snow. Thursday morning, you can tell how excited I am for it. Thursday morning, a lot of us could see some wet snowflakes mixing in across the state. No accumulations are expected, but we could have maybe some slight slushy accumulations on grassy surfaces briefly before it melts. Again, our soil temperatures are in the mid-40s right now. They're pretty warm across the state. Even some 50s being reported across central and southern Indiana. That will change in the next week. We're kind of transitioning into a colder, quieter pattern here after this system. Yesterday and today will likely be the last day we see 7 degrees here for at least another week or two. It might be a little bit before we see widespread 70s across the state again as we transition into a colder pattern here for the lighter part of March. So a little sneak peek into the future there. So with that being said, I don't see too many more questions here. So we'll time it out one more time for you here before we hop off. Here we are at 6 o'clock here tonight. Again, isolated storms and supercells moving into western Indiana. All hazards on the table here during this time frame. These storms are expected to evolve into a QLCS or linear convective system, which would be a line of showers and thunderstorms, which will quickly progress eastward across Indiana. Again, greatest tornado risk, western Indiana. Once we go into a squall line, that tornado risk goes down just a tad and evolves into more of a damaging wind risk with the risk of spin-up tornadoes. Again, your greatest risk for long-lived tornadoes anywhere where you have isolated supercells. You have the risk for a stronger tornado. Spin-up tornadoes, damaging winds here. Here's 9 o'clock, 11 o'clock, and 1 o'clock in the morning here tonight. Again, once this dry slot comes in behind our line of convection, that'll shut the precipitation off. We have a lot of dry air filtering in. And then as the low pulls east into tomorrow morning, it'll bring some of that cold air. Could have some light rain, wintry mix throughout the day tomorrow. So with that being said, all hazards on the table here tonight. Again, we have medium risk for tornadoes and wind with a little bit lower for hail. Again, your highest hail risk, western Indiana. But we could have hail up to ping pong golf ball size hail. Cannot be ruled out across western Indiana, especially in our stronger, more isolated supercells. All hazards are possible here tonight. Again, greatest area for severe weather are places in orange there where we have an elevated risk. Little bit lesser the further east you go. Here's a last look at our tornado outlook here for today. Limited risk in green, low risk in brown, a medium risk in yellow, but we do have it hatched for the possibility of a stronger tornado or two. EF2 or greater cannot be ruled out in the stronger supercells. If they do in fact materialize, again, that risk would have the greatest potential for materializing in that hatched area is where we see the greatest risk for tornadoes. And then in the brown zone, we expect to transition from individual storms into a line of storms. So brief spin-up tornadoes possible there, as well as damaging winds. Again, we have a blanket to medium risk across the entire state of Indiana tonight for damaging winds. 60 to 70 miles an hour cannot be ruled out. A little bit more uncertainty with especially across northeast Indiana there. It really depends on how strong these storms are when they get into the region. Again, we're going to start waning a little bit in terms of what ingredients we have by the time this storm gets to eastern Indiana. But a severe risk nonetheless. Could still have some potential for damaging winds, especially as these storms are expected to move rather quickly, 50 to 60 miles an hour, that could carry that wind risk with them despite moving into an area of lesser ingredients. So something to watch as well. Again, hail outlook pretty low across the eastern half of the state, but we do have a hail risk across the western half of the state. Gary, Rensselaer, Lafayette, Terre Haute, Vincennes, Jasper, and Evansville. Wouldn't be surprised to see some anywhere between quarter size and ping pong ball size hail with an isolated golf ball. Can't be ruled out either in your more isolated, stronger supercells. Again, a lot of cold air aloft. So if we get any of these stronger storms to isolate themselves with a strong updraft, some large hail may result. But once we start moving into a squall line, the large hail, ping pong ball size plus, will go down with more of a risk for dimes to quarters thereafter as we move across the state. So with that being said, here's our tornado watch that we do have in effect here for western Indiana, 9 p.m. until 9 p.m. Central Time or 10 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time across western Indiana. A couple tornadoes possible, even a couple strong tornadoes possible as well, as indicated here by the Storm Prediction Center. Scattered hail up to ping pong ball size possible, and wind gusts up to 70 miles an hour. Again, this is for western Indiana, Vincennes, Terre Haute, Crawfordsville, Lafayette, and is in effect until 9 p.m. Central, 10 p.m. Eastern. So with that being said, we're probably going to hop off here, guys. If you guys missed anything, feel free to go back and watch the beginning of the chat here. We covered timing, hazards, and everything you need to know to get you severe weather prepared for tonight. So with that being said, take care, have a good night, and we will be here live to cover any severe thunderstorm warning or tornado warning here in the state of Indiana tonight.